We have an Antifa Heads-Up for you. Here we go. It's time for the revolution.
Say you want a revolution. Well, you know, we all want to change the world. You tell me that it's evolution. Well,
all right, let's start with Scott McKay in the American Spectator. The question is, can the Justice Department do something about Antifa and Black Lives Matter and their assault on free speech? At whitehouse.org, there's a petition with over 110,000 names demanding that the federal government declare Antifa to be a terrorist organization. I have a better idea. RICO. Racketeering institutions and corrupt organizations. These people are committing crimes. They're organized across state lines. They appear as if out of nowhere. They're all, sorry, this is RICO. Anyway, it's not a terrible idea, of course, if you've followed the antics of Antifa and the rioting and the violence that they've involved themselves in. You might well think of the current definition of domestic terrorism in federal law because it pretty much fits that definition. Rioting would certainly be dangerous to human life, particularly when it's intended to intimidate the population into foregoing our right of free expression, which, of course, is what Antifa is all about. Look at the mob which showed up to riot, not just against what looked like a gaggle of neo-Nazis in Charlottesville 2 weekends ago, but the one which shut down a free speech rally featuring a pair of libertarian political candidates in Boston last Saturday. They're not exactly the Symbionese Liberation Army, at least not yet, the Weathermen or the Klan or the Earth Liberation Front. But again, not yet. But wherever Antifa and their Black Lives Matter pals show up, it sure seems like beatings and property destruction are sure to follow. And it's also notable that somebody else's opinions, which differ from the snowflake communism of Antifa and Black Lives Matter, have on offer not just the white supremacist folks, but libertarians, classical liberals, old school conservatives, traditional Americans, supporters of the police, practically anybody that these people don't like. Brings these people out of the woodwork, along with their clubs and their pepper spray and the rest of it. Now, what's especially interesting is the reaction of Antifa to the neo-Nazi crowd, given the similarity of the politics between the two sides. They're both leftists fighting over the same market. No wonder there's animus. Charlottesville looked like a Weimar Germany. It did. Looked like Weimar Germany, you know, the Bund meeting or something. The Boston meeting looked more like the Paris Commune in 1871. Counter-protesters, numbering some 40,000, arrived to attack a rally they believed would be a white supremacist affair because some minuscule outfit affiliated with the KKK said that they would attend. Speakers at the event were hardly what one might expect of neo-Nazis, though. Speakers, well, let's see. There was Sheba. I'm having trouble pronouncing that last name, but she's the woman that ran against Liz Warren for the U.S. Senate. She was a featured speaker. Pretty hard to make that event out as a white power thing since she's not white. Finding no Nazis to bloody, the Antifa nuts turned on the police instead. Some 33 arrests were made following the melee after the agitators, or between the agitators and the Boston cops. The media reported, by the way, the affair is mostly peaceful, which, of course, it wasn't. By Antifa's standards, maybe that's not untrue. I mean, they've done far worse and certainly will in the future. As a matter of fact, they have. But here's the problem with going the terrorism route. While the Patriot Act provides a definition of terrorism, there is no specific criminal charge for domestic terrorism in federal law. Defining Antifa as a terrorist organization does not mean a whole lot. As such, there is a bit of a low reward problem here, just as John Fund noted that despite all the bad behavior by these groups, the U.S. Civil Rights Commission refused to denounce Antifa violence, which of course means that, as Fund said, it's the old Marxist maxim, there are no enemies on the left. The Democrats will protect Antifa and Black Lives Matter until and even after somebody directly involved with them kills in their name. We know this. We know it because of the short shrift given to leftist violence in the wake of James Hodgkinson's attack on Steve Scalise and his GOP congressional colleagues, and we know it because of the kid gloves that they've treated these people with as they've destroyed property and injured people in their previous rioting. So to go after Antifa and Black Lives Matter as a terrorist group, or perhaps better to go after under some more easily prosecutable legal strategy as their behavior worsens, will be an exercise in purely partisan law enforcement and result in ever more increasing howls from Democrats about the authoritarianism of the Trump administration. We know this, and it can't be avoided. But here's the thing. These people are going to kill somebody, and they're going to do it soon. It's inevitable. And you know what's going to happen, don't you? They're going to kill somebody with a gun. And then the outcry for gun control. Black Lives Matter is at least indirectly responsible for the murders of 8 law enforcement officers in Dallas and Baton Rouge last year, though the organization is not being held legally responsible. When organizations like these, made up of the crazies that they are egged on by a mainstream media which lets them get away with the conceit that property destruction doesn't constitute violence, and that people have the right or even the responsibility to use violence against those they believe are Nazis, which in this case now is everybody who doesn't agree with them, after spending much time comparing Trump and other Republicans to Hitler, and led by a class of Democrat politicians who openly advocate assassination of the president, I mean, the violence is only going to grow if this is left unchecked. But at what point does the violence become widespread and serious enough that the Democrats will stand aside and allow the Trump Department of Justice to treat Antifa and Black Lives Matter as what they are? And as I just said, RICO, racketeering institutions and corrupt organizations. But at what point does this become bad enough for the Democrats to step aside and let the DOJ do their work? I mean, do we ever get to that point? Or do we just devolve into a hot civil war from the cold civil war that we've endured for the past decade at least? This column's advice is to ignore the Democrats and investigate these people right along with all the neo-Nazi and Klan groups the Justice Department is currently scrutinizing. And when they break the law, give them no quarter. We're in a dangerous time in America. Half the country's political class is actively pushing civil strife because they cannot accept the results of an election. And far too many, in the other half, like Mitt Romney and Marco Rubio, are feckless and weak in standing for ordered liberty. Trump may have to go it alone in putting down both iterations of the leftist revolutionaries who turned Charlottesville bloody. Here's hoping that he and the Justice Department have the stones to actually do it. Okay, now speaking of Antifa, we played some sound bites by Joey Gibson. He heads up the Patriot Prayer Group, a completely non-violent group that's been characterized as white supremacist and alt-right and KKK by the left-wing media, who are lying again because they're not any of those things. So we told you about how he got pepper sprayed and beaten in San Francisco while the police stood down. Well, they had another one in Berkeley. A reporter on the scene said he had never seen anything like it. He said, it was a he or a she, I forget, said Antifa just suddenly attacked out of nowhere. Here's Joey Gibson.
Harvey still pounding Texas.
No, sorry, that's not Joey. I just played the wrong soundbite. Excuse me. My bad. Here he is.
Well, we've talked to quite a few police officers. Most police officers, they join the force because they want to help people out in these situations. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's people higher up who are not allowing them to do it. Trust me, they didn't want to stand around and just watch, okay? We have mayors all over California and in this country that are using the police forces for their own political gain.
That's right. The cops are being told to stand down. Remember that one police officer that went public from Charlottesville on his Facebook page. Not only did the police, or were the police ordered to drive the two sides together, but then when the conflict broke out, they were told to stand down and not intervene. In other words, let the liberal thugs, let the roving liberal militia, the descendants of the KKK. See, they wear black, KKK wore white, but Antifa wears black. But make no mistake about it, it's George Soros and Barack Obama's army. That's who it is. Remember Obama said early on in his first term, he said we need a civilian force equally as well armed and supplied and with as much power, I'm paraphrasing here, as the military. Well, here they are. Now the question is, from where are they being organized? We need to find this out. Because in order to prosecute them under the RICO statutes, we need to find out how the organization works. And believe me, it's an organization. Somebody's running this because they don't just show up out of nowhere on the spur of the moment. It takes money to travel. It takes money for hotels and food and everything else and all the rest of it. So, Joey, the media calls you alt-right. They call you white supremacists, KKK, whatever. Are you any of these things, and did you say something racially insensitive to agitate these people?
No, we constantly preach love. It's our thing. That's what we want to do. We want to preach love, unity, and peace. These things are really important. We have to have that in our country. We walked in there, giving the peace sign with our hands up. Now, we knew that there was a potential that people would try to, assault us, but that's why we had our hands up, because we didn't want to be aggressive. We didn't want to go in there like we want to fight. We just want to be able to go in there and exist in America. That's all we want to do. We want to be able to exist in the middle of a public park, in Berkeley, or wherever that may be. And we were around a bunch of moderate liberals who were holding signs like love and peace and like nonviolence and all this stuff. And then they just sit there and watch, Antifa just barge in there and just start attacking all of us. And I'm just wondering, moderate left, like how long are you going to stay silent on Antifa? Okay. The politicians, the mayor of Berkeley, the mayor in San Francisco, Nancy Pelosi, Feinstein, all of you, how long are you going to stay silent on Antifa? Because in their silence, it's almost like they're just using Antifa to their benefit to attack free speech.
By George, I think he's got it. Yes, you see, what you're looking at here is the current iteration of Democrat leftist muscle. Tucker Carlson commented also on the police behavior.
One of the most upsetting things I've seen on tape in a long time is the end of the video that we just showed, where you're walking backward with your hands up. Someone throws a bottle of urine at you. Someone else hits you. There are police officers directly behind you. They do nothing. And then you wind up in handcuffs. How did that happen?
I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to just de-escalate the situation, and I think that we're also in a secure area too. So I think they just want to put cuffs on us and walk us away to kind of see what's going on. Once they understood the situation, they took the cuffs off and they just started rinsing us off in a hose because I was pepper sprayed like 5 times.
Yeah. Okay. Did the cops arrest any of the Antifa thugs?
I don't know. I know there's about 13 arrests yesterday. I don't know if any of that had to do with me, but we got to understand, man. There was journalists just getting beat in the streets for like 5 minutes. I mean, it was horrendous. It's a horrible thing that happened yesterday. I think America, you got to understand, like a lot of people think that if you just leave Antifa alone, just don't talk about them and they'll just go away. No, we got to stand up to Antifa. You got to talk to your politicians. Say, do you support Antifa? Do you support their violent tactics? I mean, guys, if you go on YouTube and you search up the film, there is horrendous things that happened yesterday. And this is America. Okay, this is America. This is where we should be able to go and just exist in public, say our part, just speak, just be Americans without the threat of violence, without people dressed in all black, covering up their faces, just beating people up, beating them to the pulp. I mean, there's a lot of horrible injuries yesterday.
Mm-hmm. This cries out for RICO. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, Geraldo Rivera weighed in on Antifa.
Well, I think that Antifa is doing a good job in bailing out President Trump from his missteps last week in Charlottesville. They are nothing but punks. They are, anarchists. They are people who are getting off on destroying other people's property. I think they're total thugs. And in many ways, I mean, obviously, given the ugly arc of history, there's not the awful history that the neo-Nazis and the KKK have, but this miscreants, they are really doing a good job of making the president right. And when he said that the violence came from many sides, I think this is a very, very bad thing for those who profess progressive politics.
Yeah, Geraldo, he was right when he said it. He didn't need anything further for Antifa to do to prove that he was right. Larry Elder.
Well, it's a sign of the apocalypse when when these people who are supposedly anti-fascists feel that punching somebody in the face because they support Donald Trump is a way to get their message across. The reason that they don't stick a mic in front of Bernie Sanders' face or in front of Hillary's face or Terry McAuliffe or the other big lights of the Democratic Party is because nobody whose IQ is 2 points above plant life can defend Antifa. For the same reason, they should not have stuck a mic in Trump's face over and over and over again and had him denounce David Duke and neo-Nazis and fascists. Nobody with the right mind is going to support these kinds of things. So let's do it both ways.
And you know, we've got the media, and they're fixated on two things: Russia and the KKK.
I don't know how many KKK members they are. All I know is that the organization is becoming increasingly irrelevant. I suspect there are probably more Antifa people than there are KKK people. Can we get our arms around the dimension of this problem? Is the media concerned about how widespread these fascists are the way they're concerned about the dwindling importance of the KKK?
No, as a matter of fact, none of the stuff that went on in Berkeley made it to the evening news that I saw. Did anybody see that? Did any of what went on in Berkeley make it into the mainstream media? No, of course not, because Antifa is leftist, and so is the media. So there are no enemies on the left. In the meantime, the media yesterday, at least MSNBC, is obsessed with the latest leak from Mueller's persecution of Trump. Mueller's going to look into the role that Donald Trump played in crafting the response of his son to the meeting with the what was her name, the honeypot, and well, of course he helped him craft it. Why not? Everybody who responds to anything that the Justice Department or somebody else asked him to respond to is going to consult with lawyers. They're going to consult with anybody to craft their response. What's the big deal? Okay? And then the New York Times and the Washington Post and the LA Times are freaking out over some guy who really doesn't know anything, but he's exaggerating about some kind of business deal with Russia or whatever. It's just, they just can't let it go. And it's going nowhere. And I love it.